Today marks a historic day in soccer history. A settlement has been reached between US Soccer and the US Women's National Team that draws to an end a 6-year legal battle between the two parties. The agreement will ensure equal pay for male and female players in US Soccer. It reads in part, "We have resolved our long-standing dispute over equal pay and proudly stand together in a shared commitment to advancing equality in soccer." And for more details on this agreement, US Soccer will pay $22 million to the players in the case, as well as an extra $2 million into an account to benefit the US Women's National Team players in their post-career goals and charitable efforts related to women's and girls soccer. And for more on this monumental news, host of the Attacking Third podcast, Lisa Roman, former US international Aly Wagner and president of US Soccer Federation, Cindy Parlow Cone, join me now to discuss. Cindy, I want to start with you because, of course, you represent US Soccer in this conversation. How did we get here to the settlement and the agreement finally being reached?
After months and months and months of hard work, just bringing everyone to the table, I think this is a momentous occasion. This settlement is a win for everyone. It's a win for US Soccer. It's a win for the players, women's sport, and women in general. I just want to give a shout out to the players for their tireless work with me and trusting me into pushing this over the finish line. I know there's still a lot of work to do and continuing to rebuild the relationship with the women, but I'm fully committed to doing so, and I look forward to continuing to work with them.
Cindy, you mentioned starting to rebuild that relationship with the players. I mean, it's had tension over the last few years. How does this agreement start to mend that relationship?
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit US Soccer has made mistakes in the past. And as a former player, I definitely understand that. But I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do together with the women on equal pay and what we're going to do moving forward. And this is just one step towards rebuilding the relationship. I think it was really beneficial because the players know me, they trust me, they know my level of integrity. So we were able to push this across the line together. But this is a great accomplishment. And I am so excited about the future of the game and working together with the women's players so we can really focus on growing the game both here at home and across the world. And to do that hand in hand with our women's national team players would be great because not only are they the best players in the world, they're the best ambassadors for our sport as well. So doing this together with them is really important.
Well, first, congrats, Cindy. I know you and I have both sat on the opposite side of the table in those negotiations. So this is a massive win. And I'm sure that it was one that maybe we never thought would actually exist. So my question to you, is looking forward, this agreement hinges on the CBAs getting done. And we both know that FIFA is probably not likely to equalize prize money anytime in the near future. So how difficult is it going to be to get both the men's and the women's to agree, the programs to agree to the CBAs that this hinges upon?
Yeah, with the CBAs, both groups have come together. And so the Men's Players Association is sitting in on the Women's Players Association's negotiations and vice versa. So we're really trying to be transparent to get to one structure for the contract. And now there can be differences based on what the teams need because they are different teams and they have different wants and needs. But as long as both sides agree that they're still equal, we're fine with that as a federation. The one challenge is what you said, Aly, is coming together and finding a way to equalize World Cup prize money. But the men and the women in US Soccer are committed to coming together and finding a solution on that. Obviously, at the same time, we will continue to encourage FIFA to equalize it themselves. But until that time, we need the three different parties to come together to find a solution.
Cindy, as you mentioned, you've got a unique perspective on this, having seen it from both sides. But what has your reaction been like to everybody else's reaction? And do you think this really is now the start of a fresh chapter of what's to come?
I'm just so excited. For me, this is about moving past this contentious, litigious relationship and really doing what we're supposed to be doing, is growing the game, and growing the game in all its forms. So participation, fandom, commercially, working with strategic partners. So moving past this and to not have this continuously hanging over our heads and this tension between the federation and the women's team, to put that aside and turn the page and to be able to look forward to actually really important things in growing the game, both here at home and across the world. As I said before, for me, until every girl has the opportunity to play soccer that wants to, I will not rest. So this is one step in that direction. And I think this is just a momentous moment for every little girl and every woman, whether they participate on the field, off the field, or anywhere in the sports industry.
I love seeing this new page being turned in the sport, and it doesn't stop here. But for you personally, Cindy, you're currently up for U.S. Soccer Federation president re-election. What does having this settlement say about you as president?
You know, I think what it says is that I make decisions based on what's important, not based on election time, right? I try to do the right thing all the time. And I think this gets done because I do have the trust of the players, and they all know my level of integrity and how honest I am throughout the entire process. And so for re-election, obviously it's important to me. I want to continue to pour my heart and soul into soccer in this country and grow the game at every level. And so I hope the people watching this see that this is a step in that direction, and that this settling this case with the women's national team and moving forward with them helps every one of our members in terms of moving the game forward and growing the game.
Cindy, I would just be curious then, like if we could pull back the curtains a bit and get an understanding for what those conversations have been like with the players, knowing that you are a former player. How accepting were they of you initially? Were they wary of you? And then how has that relationship evolved? And, you know, you've talked about mending the bridge, but, you know, is there still a lot of work to be done in that regard? And how much is that trust real? Is it long term?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to be done. Don't get me wrong, because this isn't just over the last few months that this has happened. You know, it goes back many, many years in the distrust of the federation. So for me to reach across the bridge as one of them, right? Aly, you and I were, I was on that other side of the table not too long ago in my own type of equal pay fight. So I understood where they were coming from. I have from the very beginning. And so I think they knew I could relate to them and understood them. And just some of them have known me for years. So they know my level of integrity. They know that I can be trusted. So we had really open and transparent conversations, which I think they really appreciated. And it's not that I always told them what they wanted to hear, but I was very open with them and trusted. And so they trusted me. So we could move this forward. But this was over many meetings together, and then us going our separate ways and meeting with our different constituencies and coming back and moving forward. And I just want to thank the players for working with me to get this across the line. We all had a bunch of sleepless nights and many, many thousands of hours of work to push this across. So I think we're in a good place. And as you said, Aly, there's still more work to do.
Was the business side different when you walked in that door into the U.S. Soccer Federation than you imagined?
You know, I think there's just a lot of moving parts. You have to remember when I came in as president, right? The legal filing that was so offensive had just been filed. So all of our sponsors were outraged. At least half the country was outraged. And oh yeah, on top of it, the country was just shutting down. The world was just shutting down due to COVID. So it was a business world that no one had ever seen before. So to think that I would have expected that, there was no chance. But you know, I've spent the last year and a half, 2 years of my life pouring my heart and soul into righting the ship and making sure we're moving in a good direction and repairing relationships with the U.S. Soccer Foundation, with our players, with our sponsors. So it has definitely been a challenge challenging environment, but I really feel like we're moving in a good direction now and we have some momentum. And I think this is just another one of those things that shows that U.S. soccer really wants to be a leader in many areas.
Well, Cindy, it's been fantastic to have you with us today. We know that you've just been so busy, so we appreciate you joining us, bringing us the latest, and congratulations to you as well on what has been such a historic day for soccer in general.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So great to hear from Cindy there, but I want to hear from you, Aly, because of course, as a former player, I can imagine that you're feeling a lot of emotion today as well.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of asked it of Cindy early on. I didn't think that we would necessarily ever see this day. I mean, being a part of negotiations way back in 2004, 2005, after we won the Olympics, and U.S. Soccer Federation had told us that they would go dark on us, that they would not schedule any games, because at that time, that was the only way we were paid, is if we had games and friendlies to participate in. And so being on a different, or being in that negotiation, and now, you know, flash forward many, many years, I'm telling you how old I am, you know, the reality is we have equal pay finally. And I do appreciate that she's saying, look, the men's and the women's programs are still different. So in the CBAs, there are going to be different needs that have to be filled, but there's recognition that wrong has been done in the past by U.S. Soccer. And it does feel like this is massive. I mean, and I just wish that, take me out of it, I wish you could get some of those funds, not that the players need it, but I wish it could go back to the torchbearers. I wish that Julie Foudy was on the receiving end of some of those funds. Christine Lilly, Brianna Scurry, you name it, Mia Hamm. Those players absolutely deserve, you know, some of that financial reward. Of course, that's not the way the settlement will land. But the reality is those players really are the ones that put U.S. soccer on the map, fought for everything that these women had a chance to then fight for themselves. So, I mean, this is massive for this U.S. soccer family, I would say, especially on the women's side of the program, of course.
Yeah, especially as well, like you said, mainly going to benefit the generations to come, Aly, in the future. Lisa, I want to ask you, though, because you're, of course, the host of our podcast here at CBS, very involved in social media. What has been the response been like so far to this news breaking this morning?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive and happy. It's a celebration. I mean, even listening to Aly Wagner and Cindy talk about this, it's been such a long time coming. And former players on Twitter, you can see their responses. They're retweeting it, quote tweeting it, saying how exciting they are and how it's really just the first step. I think that's been an overwhelming theme from the response after this announcement this morning, is that this is a huge first step forward for United States women's national team and the U.S. Soccer Federation, but it doesn't stop here. Comes next is the CBA, and then continuing to grow and gain equal pay for both of these sides is so huge. But it's a celebration today in honor of all of the hard work and the tough conversations that have happened dating way back to 2016, when this was first brought up, thanks to former players like Carly Lloyd and Becky Sauerbrunn, part of those first initial conversations.
Yeah, it's big news, isn't it, in soccer, no doubt. But Aly, do you think this really is a turning point now in women's sports in general?
Yeah, great question, Poppy. I mean, the recurring theme has always been that this U.S. soccer program on the women's side has led the global game. And while we have seen some other federations step up and equalize pay before U.S. soccer, what I would say is I absolutely think this is a turning point globally. When U.S. soccer gets this done, they've always been the leader in women's football. And I think that this will push, and other federations do the same, but more likely embolden other players to step up and ask for the same and demand the same. And that has been a recurring theme of this program. And I also believe there's an element, you know, I alluded to it before, but U.S. soccer does have some leverage. As much as FIFA is made up of over 200 different federations, the reality is U.S. soccer should utilize that leverage to continue to push FIFA in the right direction to equalize, the award payment that comes out of FIFA and their investment overall, because that's what this is about. Getting women into football where they can make a living and making the global game accessible for not just all boys, but all women as well, girls.
This changes the future of the sport overall, and hopefully it's a trickle-down effect to other nations and other federations around the world, all the way down to the youth systems in putting more money and equal money in the youth boys sides and the youth girls sides of soccer, so that these players can grow up with equal opportunity, knowing that they can compete at the highest level and be treated equally and fairly amongst their male counterparts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a monumental day, isn't it? And one that is sure going to be celebrated. And a reminder that you can watch the US women's national team in action tomorrow night in the She Believes Cup. They're looking to keep things rolling after their 5-0 win against New Zealand when they welcome Iceland to Toyota Stadium. And for more on women's soccer, a reminder, you definitely need to check out the Attacking Third podcast with our very own Lisa Roman and Sandra Herrera. But a reminder, the US in action tomorrow night against Iceland at 9 p.m. Eastern.